All right, so now let's kickstart this newly named event off the right way. We have a fireside chat planned with highly accomplished entrepreneur Marcelo Cortez. Marcelo leveraged the support of Velocity Incubator for his company Fair, a wholesale marketplace for independent local retailers and makers. This is an exciting time for Marcelo and team, and for us too. Fair has been growing their marketplace at an astonishing pace, and on the heels of that growth has recently secured a $150 million Series D investment. Woo, that's amazing. All right, in doing so, Fair became Waterloo Region's newest unicorn. Do you guys know what that means? It means a private company valued at $1 billion or more. Pretty amazing. Good job, Marcelo and Fair. All right, so please join me in giving a warm welcome to Marcelo. Come on out, Marcelo. Woohoo! I'm also going to invite Jay because Jay is going to be doing the chat, so you're welcome to. Yeah, I'm going to do a bit of an intro, and then you guys can get chatting. All right. Also, thank you, Marcelo, for coming early and taking the time to talk to the students around here. Much appreciated.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so a bit more about Marcelo. Marcelo moved to Canada from Brazil almost 20 years ago in 2004. He enrolled in... 2001. There you go. He enrolled in computer science at the University of Waterloo. He has extensive software engineering experience, and prior to starting Fair, Marcelo was an engineering lead on Google Plus for Android, having launched the first mobile version at Google Hangouts. Always doing cool things, Marcelo. And after that, you founded a mobile app, correct?
That's right.
Your own venture, but then soon returned to an established, fast-growing tech company as the engineering lead for Square. Square was actually where Marcelo met his now co-founders, Max and Daniele. They knew there had to be a better way for local retailers to procure unique merchandise for their sole stores. So they started Fair in 2016. All right, flash forward 3 years from Square to Fair. And they now employ 150 people spread across offices in Kitchener-Waterloo, San Francisco, and Salt Lake City.
It's over 200.
Over 200. They keep growing, but, you know, awesome. Did you hear that, students? Awesome. They are affiliated with 7,000 makers. Did that grow too? All right. And 50,000 retail outlets, more, all right, and growing, and are now notching up 1 million in sales each day. Okay. All right. With that, I'll hand it over to Jay, the director of startups at Velocity, who will be chatting with Marcelo for the next hour or so. Thank you, Marcelo.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much again for the time. It's not often that we get 45 minutes with a founder, well, 2 times over founder, 2 times over employee that's had a lot of impact at some big tech companies, as well as local big tech companies. So this is a really great opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome.
I love watching all of this new things happening.
And you support it, too. It's not just watching.
Sure, for sure.
As Camila mentioned, talking to students, you've done the same for the pitch competition in Startup Land. So I think let's start with just a broad question. We heard a little bit about your history there, but just from your own words, walk me through the journey that you've taken to be the CTO and co-founder of Fair.
Okay, I'll try to be fast.
Oh,
it's a long story.
It's a good one.
So I'm from Brazil originally, and from a very young age, I got introduced to computers. I was about 10 or 11 when I first started playing games on those computers where you had to actually type the whole game, the code for the game before you could play anything. And it was like love at first sight for me. I couldn't, but we didn't have means to get a computer or anything. So I had very few chances of interacting with one. My parents had stores in Brazil, and at some point I was about 13 when they actually bought computers for the stores, and I was there every day. I again didn't know English very well at the time. but I would learn the basic commands, and it was all in English, and I would type every freaking command that I could find there. Anything that had a .exe or .com in front of it, or bat, I would run them and see what happens, and I started learning English. I learned a lot of English from the help on those commands. And I became the expert. Like, I was 13, but like any problem with the computers, my parents would call me, I would go there and build computers, change the PCI cards and whatever we had, and put computers on the network. And very fortunately, that when I was 14, I went into high school. I went into a very special high school in Brazil, where it was like all day long, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. And it was like a high school and college together, where half of the day I'm learning the high school subjects, and the other half it was college subjects. And they had 3 options. It was, at the time, mechanics, which is like a mechanic engineering course, electrical engineering, and this brand new one, which was called at the time information technology, which was related to computers somehow. And the first year, you would do a little bit of each one of those subjects or programs, and then at the end, you had to choose which one to pick. The funny story there is that my dad was like, "You're going to mechanics, right? You have to." Like, the whole family had some background there, and I was like, yeah. And the day to pick, I went there and I put, of course, information technology course, and my dad was very pissed. And he was like, "What are you thinking? This has no future." I'm like, "Well,
So
that's what I like to do."
we'll definitely come back to that. That parents don't know best.
Yeah,
but
so
keep going.
Anyways, I got into that, and I started, very fortunate, I started programming at that age. And very soon after that, I managed to get into the internet. The internet, those days, were like BBS, and you had to use the phone line, and it was a nightmare for me because a phone call cost money at that time, local phone calls, so connecting to the internet or even to a BBS cost money. So I had from 6 a.m. to, from midnight to 6 a.m., it was free. So that's the time I used every day. I was connected, reading everything I could. Anyways, at the end of that program, to actually get a college degree, I needed to work for like 8 months as like an internship. And I moved to São Paulo, which was a city, very big city close to where I grew up. And I found a job, very fortunately, like a internship job at a big consulting company. They were like, "We never hire people out of college. We hire people out of universities, but you seem to know your stuff, and we'll hire you." And they hired me and 3 other university students that just graduated. And I prepared so much. I had 3 months before I started the job. I read so many books, programming books. I was so prepared for like a very hard job where I would have to architect things. And it was, when I joined, it was like, this is not hard at all. I know how to do this stuff. And people were struggling, and I was like, whoa, I like this. And very soon after that, like 3 months in, like the university students that joined, they were asking me questions all day long, and I was helping even the more experienced engineers there. And I was like, "Oh, I like this." Anyways, I had a lot of success there. Very soon before I finished the internship, they offered me a full-time position, doubled my salary, which was very low, and like I was so happy. And that was like just before, this is like 98, 99, before the boom of the internet, the collapse of the internet, the tech bubble that happened. And there were jobs everywhere. Like I got 3 job offers every week, and it was really insane. And I changed jobs a few times, and this company where I started called me back, and they're like, "Just tell me what you want to make. We're going to hire you again. We need you." And I went back, and like I was basically 20 years old, and I was making a lot of money. And I was like, okay, next step, I have to get to Silicon Valley, or at the time, not even Silicon Valley. I was more thinking of Redmond. Like Microsoft was like the big deal. And I was like, I have to get there. What do I do? How do I go from where I am to that? And I was like, well, first I need to learn English well. So how do I do that? And so at some point, I quit my job, sold almost everything I had, and decided to come to Canada to learn English because it was cheaper to come here. And I thought like Toronto is going to be a cool place. I heard good things. There's snow there. I never saw that in my life in Brazil. So I came, and I came with a few friends. And I arrived here in 2001, January, started studying English, like didn't I was having more fun than learning English, but I was learning English while having fun, so it worked. And internet collapsed. September 11th happened, and the bubble exploded, and like there were no jobs. Nobody would hire me. I had no visa to work. I didn't speak English. I kept battling, right? Like my mom came from Brazil, and she's like, "You have to come back. What are you doing here? This makes no sense. You had such a good life there. You're doing so well." And I was like, "No, I'm gonna stay." I kept pushing through, and I got very fortunate because the stuff I was working with in Brazil was, at the time, mobile, which was like just getting started with like these Windows CE devices that most people here don't even know what they are. So companies here had the need for that, for people with experience on that, and there were nobody. So if I got a job, and the company helped me sponsor, it was Bell, they helped me sponsor my visa. I got not sponsor a visa, get a work permit, got a work permit. It wasn't easy. And I started to really fall in love with Canada, and I decided, like, okay, I want to. Actually, funny thing, I had an interview with Microsoft at the time, and they wanted
in Redmond, like for a job in Redmond?
Yes, for Redmond, and they called me, and it was to work on Visual Studio, and I passed the phone screen, and they were like, "Come here for interviews," and I couldn't. There was no way for me to get a visa to the U.S. at the time, so I was like, "Okay, I can't go," and I wasn't sure that I wanted either, so. And I decided that I want to stay in Canada longer. I like it here. Things are working. And I decided that if I want to stay here, I need to go to university. University of Waterloo is the best. I fought a lot to be accepted here. It wasn't easy because, again, my marks from Brazil didn't translate to anything. I had to find people that would recommend me, that were working with me, and eventually I got in. I was always working full-time, right? So before I came to university, I found a job in Waterloo. I started working, and I was commuting from Toronto here. Then when I got accepted into the university, I moved here, and I was always working full-time and coming to school full-time. And I did that for a few years. I changed jobs a few times. I was a contractor at the time, so like for me, I didn't really, and we'll talk about that later, but like I didn't really focus much on like career path on these jobs. It was more like, give me money per hour, and I'll do whatever you want here. I learned a lot there, but eventually Google called me. Right? Well, Google started an office here. They acquired this small company here, and I was like, oh, Google's here. Google's a cool company. I applied. They never got back to me. But I think when I was going here to school and working into a job at Nikon at the time, the camera company, Google called me, and they're like, do you want to explore opportunities? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, okay, when can you come to California? And I'm like, no, I'm going to school here. You have an office here. I want to work for you here. And Google wasn't really very happy with that, but since they were like, okay, let's do a phone screen. I did a phone screen. Once I did a phone screen, I did very well on the phone screen. Then they're like, okay, what do you want again? You want to work? It's working in Waterloo, no problem. So I interviewed here, got a job, and started working there. And this was like, so it took me like almost 10 years from the time I started working to get into Google. But that was the first contact with like the real high-tech company, Silicon Valley-like, and I loved it. I was like a kid in Disneyland, right? And I was very fortunate that Google Plus was just starting, and I joined that team. And soon after, I was leading the Android app for that. Then things changed at Google. They moved it to Mountain View. I didn't want to move with the project. I started building Google Hangouts. I built the very first version of that for Google. And then I decided to leave Google to start my own company. I was like, I learned some things about Silicon Valley, and I saw this company starting. I was like, that's what I want to do.
How long were you at Google for?
2 years. Okay, 2 years. And so I left. Me and another very senior engineer at Google, we left, and we started this company. And we didn't really like what I learned there is that I wasn't ready to start a company. I thought starting a company is like you have an idea and you build something and you build a company out of it, and there's a lot more to be learned before you start a company. That was my biggest lesson. But we built something pretty cool. Like we built an app that's similar to Instagram, but for not only photos, but animated photos. So you could like record a video and like edit it, and things would move and some things wouldn't move. Again, even though we didn't know what we were doing, we had a lot of people download the app without any marketing or anything, but we never had a long-term plan. So after a while, when we launched it, like 6 months into the company, we started to discuss long-term things, and we didn't agree on the future plan, and there was no business side, and we were like, okay, maybe we shouldn't continue doing this. And at the same time, I got very fortunate that I got to talk to this guy, Jesse Wilson, who was working for Square here in Kitchener all by himself. And I knew him from Google, and I met him, and he's like, why don't you come join me at Square? Square was like this rocket ship startup, right? That was like having hyper growth, was still pretty small, but growing very fast. And I was like, well, that's what I need. I need to go to a company like that to learn how they operate, how they go about building products, how do they plan, basically everything there, so that I can start a company in the future and maybe find people there as well that like complement my skills to start a business. And I joined Square here in Kitchener. Again, it was a funny story there because Square was like, interviewed me, I passed. They're like, okay, when are you moving to California? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Not this conversation again.
I want to stay here. And they're like, there was a lot of back and forth. And I was like, well, if I have to move, I'm not accepting the offer. And then they're like, okay, you can stay there with Jesse. They had no plans of opening an office here. Again, I got very fortunate that soon after this product started, and they called me, and they're like, we are working on this prototype. Can you help? So I was the first engineer to join this cash app that they were building at the time, and Jesse joined me after, and we started to hire people here to help, and it started to become a product very quickly, and became a product. With the core of engineering was our basement here. We have 5 people working out of our basements until Square had no option. They had to start an office here. So we started the office.
Whose basement?
Sometimes Jesse's, sometimes we would go to my house. It was like, depending on the day. Most of the time, it was at Jesse's house.
And this, at the time, was a company that had raised hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah, they were a $3.3 billion company, but they had no plans of opening an office in Toronto, and they had no HR to deal with, like, how do you hire people in Canada and things like that. You could hire 2 people in Canada. If you need one more, you had to start an entity here. Right. Whatever rule that was. So like, we actually had another person work that we had to make them convert to being a co-op or an intern because of that.
For legal reasons.
For legal reasons, yes. So anyways, I got very fortunate because Max and Daniela, my 2 co-founders at Fair, were on this product at the same time in the early days. They were both in California, more on the business side and the data science side. And we were here, and we connected very well from the early days, worked very well together. From the very early days, we were already talking about one day we're going to build a business together, even though like we really believe in this cash app thing that we're building here. And it took 4 years. We made that product very successful, and at some point, we were like, okay, let's go and do our own company. And we did. That's how I became CTO of Fair and co-founder.
Amazing. Okay, thank you.
I'm sure you have more questions.
No, we've got lots of questions. This was really good because you've given lots of direction for us to go. But I guess I want to just play back a couple things that really stood out to me. There was probably at least 6 points along that journey that I literally wrote down the word resourcefulness, because you demonstrated incredible entrepreneurship capabilities and skills right from the beginning, whether you identified with that word or not, along all of those steps, right? Like, I've got a good setup, but I aspire to something more. I'm just going to uproot myself. Like arguably is one of the most difficult things you could possibly do. The other one I'd say is that the network that you have built and cultivated along the way was super important. These connections, people you met at Google that then went to Square, people at Square that are now your co-founders, people that helped endorse you to make sure you could get to Waterloo. So like those are 2 really, really interesting ones that I at least want to play back. There's things we'll pick up on here. I forgot to mention at the beginning that we'll talk for another about 30 minutes, and then we'll do Q&A. So definitely kind of register any questions that you have. I'm sure there was a lot just in that first journey that you might want to ask about. We'll have about 15 minutes at the end. Even for those on the live stream, if you get your questions in the next couple minutes, we'll make sure to ask those at the end. So where to go from here? There's so much in there. Maybe just pick up at the end that you said, so you're at Square, working on Square Cash. You connected really well with these other folks that are working in a similar product area. And could you elaborate on that? Like, what were the signals that made you believe this is someone I want to work with, regardless of what company I'm at?
Part of it was what I learned from my past experience starting a company, which was like, we need complementary skills, right? Like I need 2 engineers starting a company. We lack a lot on other things, business, data science, sales, whatever it is. Building a very successful product with Max and Daniela, I saw like how you need complementary skills. Max was there on the product side. He was a very strong product manager, built many successful products at Square and elsewhere. Daniele like built the whole fraud detection system for the Cash App by himself that moved like billions of dollars. We connected well in a personal note as well, because again, this is like a long-term relationship when you start a company with somebody. And like, we felt like we knew we could build things together, right? And even when we were thinking about ideas of what to work on, having people that you know, like knowing what your strengths are as a team will help a lot to help you pick the right idea. Like we could have gone and we talked about crazy ideas that would require R&D, like VR stuff and like whatever crazy things. But our strength is really execution together. We can find a problem, we can find something that you can apply technology to, and we can really make a change and move very fast. So that's the type of market that we're looking for. So the connection we had personally, how well we worked together, and the skill set that we had gave me very clear signal that those were the people that we should start a company together in the future.
Cool. So at the time that you were working on Square Cash, but with this ideas kind of hatching in the background.
Many others too.
Yeah, I'm sure there were lots of different ideas, but like Square Cash was doing really well. Square was doing really well. It was public at that point. Stock price was rising.
Yes.
Presumably everyone was doing well financially. What gave you the conviction to say, I'm going to leave that behind? Same way that you said, I'm going to leave this great life I have in Brazil to move. Like similar thing. You had a really good setup at Square.
So let me tell you this first, because I know you're going to ask about this as well. Like, my family always thought I was completely crazy. It's like when I called my parents one day and I would go home for the weekends, I would tell them, listen, I'm quitting this job and I'll go to, they're like, are you insane? Nobody finds a job like this. You have a perfect job, you're going to quit it. Don't do this. You can't do that. I'm like, listen, it's my future. I'm young. I'll find something else. I have confidence that I can go back to it if I need. I did a pretty good job there. And that happened multiple times, right? Like, and as I said, even when I was in Canada here in the very early time, my mom came here and she was like, you have to go back to Brazil. You had a very good life there. You're there struggling. You're fighting for a visa. You don't have a job. I was like, I got this. Don't worry. When I told my parents I was going to leave Google, they were like, okay, you are insane. Like, you make no sense. You make no sense. And they were so worried. I think for the first time ever, when I told them I'm quitting Square, they were like, okay, you know what you're doing. You go do it. We don't understand, but you go and do it. So for me, it's like I wanted to do things. I wanted to do bigger things, right? And my personality is that, like, even at Google, you project the future and you know your trajectory there, and it's a great one. Like, but it's bounded, right? You know, like if you look 5 years in the future, I know where I could be, the highest place I could be, and the lowest place, and they're not that far apart, depending on how hard I work or not. And I knew I could do more than that, but I need to take a different path for that. And like for me, the not knowing and knowing that I could be better is what really triggers me. And I'm like, I need to go and check. And I know that I could always go back to Google. Right? They will always take you back. As long as you do a good job, they will always take you back. So I never had a doubt in my mind. I was like, I'll go and try this thing, and I will answer the unknown question. And if it might not work, I know I will do fine no matter what.
Right. So just to quantify this sense of growth since that point, that when you left and decided to go, like, can just give us a sense of the scale of opportunity and the speed at which Fair is growing and tackling that opportunity?
Well, Fair is going to be 3 years in January, right? We have raised to date 6 rounds of investment. So it's like 2 rounds a year approximately. We went from a pre-seed, seed, Series A, B, C, and D. Last year we raised a B and a C 3 months apart. So we raised 40 million in June or August and 60 million in October, November.
What are the signals that investors are seeing that give them confidence to...
It's always us being very aggressive on our goals and then blowing through those goals. We show our plans to our investors and they look at it and they're like, if you can achieve those, it's going to be really impressive. We haven't seen a company do that before. And we go there and we're like, okay, we did better than what we planned. What's next? There were many check marks, but like through the history of Fair itself, it's been like, there's always the same challenge, right? It's initially like finding the team and getting something going, and then finding product market fit, which we executed like madmen. We worked super hard the first year, like 7 days a week, 13, 14 hours a day, nonstop, until we found that. Each one of these points gave us new validation and usually came with a new round of investment. Then we got product market fit, and it was like, whoa, we are growing so crazy. We're growing like 200% month over month. Like every month, we are like 3 times bigger at the end of the month. And
on like basically the
on
merchandise
sales,
volume?
on
Yeah,
sales.
Yeah, okay.
And we look in the future and we're like, okay, it's growing very fast. We raised money. We have like 13 million US in the bank, but we are losing money for every transaction, right? We found product market fit. Products, customers love what we're doing. Sales are growing. We're tripling sales every month. But we lose money on every dollar sold here, and no matter how much money you have in the bank, at this rate, you're going to run out of money pretty quickly. So the next phase came where like it was all about fixing unit economics. And again, it doesn't help to have unit economics fixed if you don't have product market fit. You're not growing, you're not going to go anywhere anyway. So we did things at the right time. Then we spent 5 months, and it was really impressive because in 5 months we turned it around from like losing money to actually making money on every transaction. We had all the knobs in the system.
Still growing at 200%?
Still growing pretty. We didn't decrease growth, not 200%, but like, because that if you keep growing at 200% month over month for too long, you're bigger than Amazon very quickly, right?
That's the goal, though, right?
Yeah, well, yes, but you can't do that in a year. It's impossible, right? So yeah, we basically that's when we raised our B and C together. We fixed unit economics. We're now actually making money for every dollar sold. We're still growing fast, and the company looks a lot more like stable. So we raised a B. Investors are like, holidays are coming. Our business, of course, grows a lot during holidays because we are selling products. And investors said, we'll give you credit for the growth you're projecting during the holidays. They gave us money for Series B. We blew through those, and they were like, okay, we want to give you more money. We're like, well, give us the right value, we'll take the money because, again, our business needs a lot of money. And then since then, it then came to the next phase, which was like, okay, now you have product market fit, you have unit economics figured out, you're growing fast, then it's really about like starting to build a long-lasting business, like putting the right leadership in place, organizing the company, right? When you're 10 people, 30 people, it's very different than to organize and to have a product organization then with 50 and then 100 and then 200. And like we have been going through this phase, like we were 45 in December, we were like over 200 now. So a lot of like rethinking happens during those times.
Right. Okay. So I want to switch topics a little bit to kind of get at what many people in this audience or on the live stream might be, the situations they might be in. So if you're here in person or you're on the live stream, you have some sort of entrepreneurial interest for sure, otherwise you wouldn't be here. And if you're here, that means you're among the top caliber of students on the planet because you're in the University of Waterloo, so that's just kind of by definition. So you've got a lot of the core ingredients that you've talked about before. You're smart, you're motivated, many of you will have robust commercial experiences through co-op. So you might be thinking about a startup, you might be thinking about many employment opportunities that are ahead of you through co-op or after graduation, similar to what Marcelo was saying, that you've got lots of opportunities. So I want to dig into that theme of questions. So the first one is, you mentioned that when you left Google to start FreePoint, which was the mobile app company, that you weren't ready for it. Your lesson learned from that was, yeah, I was a really good engineer, that was clear, but I was not ready to start a business. What were you not prepared for that your career to that point hadn't prepared you to do?
Yeah, so like up until that point in my career, I have always been building software, right? Programming. I knew that we knew how to build anything. Technically, no challenge was a big challenge for us. We could do it. And at a company like Google, that's what you do. You're hired there as an engineer. You're building software. Like you don't talk about products. You don't think about the customer. You don't think about go-to-market or anything. It's like, here is a design. You do, with engineering, you do whatever you want. You go there and build this. You have to get really high up in the food chain in California, most likely, to actually have a say in the product. So it was all about building software. When we got out and started a company, it's like, oh, actually, we need to know how to talk to investors. We need to think about financial planning. We need to talk about accounting. We need many other things that in the world of engineering, with 2 engineers there, we didn't have. Besides, even the product part is we knew how to do, like how to go from like an idea to designing to implementing, even like some go-to-market strategy. But there's a lot more to building a company, right? And that's why like it's a very small world inside of Google if you're doing engineering or product management, or you are in R&D there, versus like you go to a startup, like at Square, it was a completely different experience, especially building the Cash app there, because it was like our company inside of Square. We started that thing from scratch. There was no hierarchy. It's us and Jack Dorsey, and we built that thing. We had to think. Like, things were not working. Nobody would tell us, oh, this is what you do. Build a referral program. Try this thing. It's like us. We would get together as a team and be like, how do we change this product to make it work?
You were entrepreneurs. Like, you were very entrepreneurial inside that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And we had to be.
Right. Okay.
And I like that. For me, it was like, I want to have a say. Like, when I built something like Hangouts, which is a very cool thing, a lot of people use it, I never felt like a ownership on it. Like, I led a lot of it. But it was always like,
but for Square Cash, you did.
For Square Cash, I definitely did. Even though, so the comparison that we do is that like we were building like a startup inside of Square, but it was like a simulator because we have this big, well-funded company like supporting us. It's not like if I fail, I lose my job or I don't have a salary. So it's like building a startup in a simulator. When you go to the real world, it's a lot more like dangerous and shake. You have to make much more important decisions. But that's how it felt inside of Square.
Interesting. Okay. So kind of going back to the idea that students here have a lot of opportunities in front of them and are probably wrestling, we've heard this at Concept, that they're wrestling with trying to decide between what's the best opportunities for them in the near term. Should they work at really big tech companies like a Google, a Facebook, or insert any other large company, work at rising stars like Fair, Vidyard, Applyboard, AvidBots, or should they start their own thing? Mm-hmm. And there's many different options, but if those are kind of three buckets, what advice would you have for a student or a recent grad thinking about how to weigh those options and the pros and cons?
There's definitely pros and cons to every option. I wouldn't say like, oh, go to a company like Fair. I should say that. You should do that. But the reality is, I mean, working in a company like Google has its benefits. The most important thing is wherever you go, you try to learn and grow as much as you can, as fast as you can. Startup is definitely the best place to learn quickly. If you have all the traits that you need to be an entrepreneur, and you're going to absorb things and grow in your career and wear multiple hats and fail at some, and you're going to find the things that you love to do, and you can focus on those things. It's especially successful. Like, the problem with startup is that there are many, unfortunately, that they haven't done it before, and that's the problem, in my view. If you're out of school and you start a company, which it's a great time to do it because you also like you don't have much to lose. You can keep trying and do other things later. You might not know how to actually do things properly. How does like successful companies operate and how do they go about this? And there's a lot of gaps there that you're not going to be able to fill yourself. Right? So there is a chance to succeed, but usually I would say the chance is much lower than if you actually have. We succeeded. A lot of our success I attribute to what we learned at Square, for example. So in my opinion, the best route is definitely to join a company that's like hyper-growth, which is also like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Not many people have the opportunity to work for a hyper-growth company. There are very few of them around, right? So being there and seeing how that is, you learn. If you have the capabilities of learning how those operate, that for me is the best path to get ready to actually build a successful company. Now, building your own company, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to fail a lot. You're going to learn a lot. You fail no matter what a lot, and you're going to learn a lot. And it will prepare you for the future somewhat, and there is a chance you are going to be successful. Now, going to a company like Google, the advantage there is, especially depending on your personality, if you really you can't handle chaos, because startups, no matter how well organized they are, there will be chaos, there's change, there's constant change. You have to be comfortable in that environment, right? But if you're not really into that, you don't have that personality, a company like Google, you really see and learn like closer to like, it's a more narrow, way narrower scope, right, of like how to build software properly. And you learn that, and having a company like Google or Facebook or Apple in your resume opens a lot of doors for the future as well. So again, there are pros and cons. In my opinion, if you can find the right startups, and again, there aren't that many of them, that would be my first option. Today, knowing what I know today, when I had 10 years of experience almost when I joined Square, and I thought it would be just like another job. I go there and I'll build software for them, and I was like, holy, there is a whole different world out there that I didn't know about of how to do things properly and how to think through challenges and how to prioritize and so on. That for me, it was really eyes-opening. And again, I believe a lot of our success came from joining that and being able to execute in that environment.
So I think this is a tough question, but how do you find those hyper-growth opportunities that give you a lot of autonomy and experience like Square did?
I get asked that a lot.
Right.
I would say My answer is it's obviously very hard. Usually you wait too long, and then it's like, okay, it might be too late now. It's questionable as well. Some people think it's late to join Fair, right? You're a billion-dollar company. Like when I joined Square, it was a $3 billion company. It was just starting. Like it became much larger than that. And people there still think of me as an early employee. Right. I say to people like in this room, students specifically, look at the investors. They do a lot of, they don't throw money out at companies. They do a lot, especially the good ones. Find out who the good investors are. It's not hard. Anybody, Jay will give you the list. And look at the investors of each company. Like the good investors, they don't throw their money away. They even small investments, they think a lot before giving that money. They do a lot of homework. They know the size of the market. Like some of our investors would go to them and be like, we're going to be a billion-dollar company one day, and here's our plan. And they're like, we don't invest in billion-dollar companies. We want $100 billion companies. Like, how are you going to get there? And we were like, oh, that's a much harder question. Let me go back and to the drawing board before I talk to you. But those are the investors, some of the investors we have, right? And again, that's what I would look at.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Excellent. Okay, we're out of time on the back and forth, but I'm going to steal a little bit of time just on a rapid fire wrap up question before we launch into Q&A. So I'm going to say, well, for the first couple, I'm just going to ask a question and just say first response comes to mind. If there was one book, blog, or podcast that you could tell this audience and the folks in the live stream to consume, what would it be and why?
One book that comes to mind to me is The Score Takes Care of Itself from Bill Walsh. It's, again, not a tech-specific book, but for me specifically, I'm always this rebel person, right? That like I was against the rules. Like people say, this is how you do things, I would do it differently, and whatever I thought, contrarian. And I was like, not disrespectful, but like by not following the rules, like getting late to work or like not respecting the rules in the environment. Today I don't think that was the right approach, even though like I was very smart and I could get away with it. The book is very good at showing like to build a very successful organization, it's not just about talent and doing the right things and building a software that people want. There is everything behind it, respecting the brand, being on time, every single employee being respectful to each other and how you treat people, everything matters. So
Score takes care of itself. Okay, we'll add that to the Velocity library. Most important documentary people should see?
There are many that I like. I like to see the ones about successful people because I like to try to understand how they thought and how their story was. The recent one on Netflix with Bill Gates is a good one. The documentary on Steve Jobs is a good one. I mean, you hear stories and you read, and I like to really see how did they really operate and try to understand that.
Cool. So you mentioned earlier you fell in love with Canada, you don't want to leave even though you've been proposed to go to California many times. What's a hidden gem in this region or in this area that you think everyone should know about?
I mean, I would think people here know better than me nowadays because I don't get to go around much. There is a coffee place downtown Kitchener, Matter of Taste, which is very well known, but I go there a lot. I have hired a lot of people there in one-on-ones, coffee meetings.
So if they're looking to talk to you,
go there. I'm there all the time.
Matter of Taste.
We have a new office now that has a lot of good coffee stations around, so I don't go there as often anymore.
Okay. All right, last one. I'm going to say a word. You say the first word that comes to mind. No hesitating. Waterloo.
Home.
Freepoint.
What if?
What if? So Freepoint is the startup that you did for about a year. What if? Interesting. Amazon.
Competitor.
Google Plus.
Disappointment.
This is being live streamed.
Let me explain that then. Since it's live stream. I mean, the technology we built there was amazing. The engineering team, the people involved there was amazing. My disappointment is really that I didn't have a say into the product. I had so many ideas that how we could make that. I think we really lacked connection with the user. If we had yes.
So just to contrast that, it sounds like you had the direct opposite experience with Square Cash.
Exactly.
Right? So it's quite interesting. Okay, two more. Investors.
Money. I mean,
that was a cop-out.
There were others that come to mind too, but I would have to explain for too long.
Okay. Unicorn.
Overrated.
Okay. Thank you very much for the formal part. We will do Q&A, but I just want to thank you for that. That was great, really insightful.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we're starting with a question from the live stream. Is that true? Yes. Okay, take us away, Nick.
All right, so from the live stream, how did you know when you had the right idea?
That's a great question. You don't, right? So, and this is a very good advice to everybody here. One thing that we did very well, like we wanted to prove the idea before we even spent any time doing it. What we did, we were fortunate to be at Square. That's another big benefit of a company that has good investors. We were very well connected to the investors of Square as well. They knew who we are, building a successful product inside the company. The investors know that team, right? So we had a connection with them. One of them is Keith Rabois, who is a very well-known person. You guys, if you don't know who he is, you should go and learn. We were very close to him. He hired some of our executives today at Fair at Square when they were very young and didn't know what they were doing. He's very good at finding talent. We would go to him and pitch the ideas. And Max, our CEO, we would have these crazy ideas. And just based on how nervous he was before he would go meet with Keith, I knew how bad or good the idea was. And Keith was a guy that he's always going to be very blunt. And he would be like, this idea sucks. And he would ask us 3 questions that would like completely break the idea. Fair was the first idea that we went to him with. And he was like, this is not that bad. And we were like, whoa, there's something here. But we also validated the idea. Like Danielle and I told Max, okay, this sounds like a good idea. And we talked about this idea for 2 years before we actually started the company and other ideas too. We told Max, go out, buy products, show them go to a store, show us that people really want what you're trying to build. So we did that, and like we walk into a store, and we're like, here are some products, try to sell them. We think they're good. We had no idea. Some were good by chance, some were not. Try to sell them. If you sell them, you pay us. If you don't sell, we'll come back and take them. And of course, the stores are like, yeah, we'll try that. And it turned out that some of the products, it might be luck as well, but some of the products we gave them, they told us, we would never have bought this, but it became a bestseller in our store. Mm-hmm. And again, it was completely by chance, but by being there and listening to an actual customer saying that, I was like, okay, we are onto something here because we can use data to make this a reality for most products.
So much resourcefulness demonstrated just in that story. That's great. Okay, we'll do live questions now. Oh, no, we're doing one more from the live stream?
So last one from the live stream. Yep. How many pivots were needed before launching your first MVP?
Of Fair, specifically? I don't think we did any pivot. Actually, we have a WhatsApp conversation, a group conversation between me, Danielle, and Max from 3 years before we started the company, where Max described the problem to us. Because Max knew the problem because he knew the space well from his past entrepreneurial endeavors. And if I show you guys that WhatsApp conversation, it's actually what we're doing today. Like if you look at the other day, I was watching our pitch at Y Combinator Demo Day when Max got to stage and told people what our idea was and our plan for this market. We are building that. It's pretty impressive. People change their minds. We change things, like how the product works and a little bit of our ideas, but the core problem we are solving in the marketplace has not changed at all.
So that's like the power of each of the founders' experience to be able to inform that, and also the validation that you did. The validation,
right? For sure. And understanding the market. You have to understand your market and your customers very well. We thought we knew the market. Turned out we didn't at all. Like we had to learn a lot, but we knew enough that we managed to be successful.
Cool. Okay, live questions. If you throw your hand up, someone in a gray shirt will come to you.
How did you get initial users for your marketplace at Fair?
Good question. So we're building a two-sided marketplace, right? Where we need supply to get demand, and if you don't have demand, supply is not going to want to get you. We hacked it. If you read how, I like to tell this story on how, you guys are probably familiar with DoorDash today. People know DoorDash here, yes? Most people. DoorDash is a food delivery company. There was another company called Caviar that DoorDash just acquired recently. That doesn't matter. That was, Square acquired that company years back, and actually Max worked on that. He moved out of Cash to work on that. So I know both companies well. So I'll just tell you guys this, because it's a very good story of how to get started. Caviar was building this food delivery, and they were like, okay, we need to onboard restaurants, right, so that we can sell food to consumers. They would go to a restaurant, convince them to join the platform, write a contract, take pictures of every dish, and then build that menu. It was super expensive and time-consuming. DoorDash went the other way around. They were like, scraped all the menus on the internet. They didn't have pictures. They had just descriptions in most cases. They started selling without having any relationship with the restaurant. When they got an order, they would call the restaurant and be like, hey, prepare this food. I'm sending a driver there to pick it up in 20 minutes. We'll pay you. And that's how they started, right? And they grew way, way faster than Caviar with a much lower cost of acquisition. We did kind of the same. We started selling products. Makers didn't really know about us or join us. Like, we would get an order once somebody wants to buy it. So we filled up our marketplace with products. Once we got an order, we would call the maker and be like, hey, we have an order for you to fulfill for this store in Florida. Here's the order. Are you willing to fulfill them? And they were like, yeah, like, get me an order, I will fulfill them. So we would then, we would get a second order and a third, and then eventually we would be like, hey, we are fair. This is what we do.
Hand over the 30% now.
Now we start charging commission for these orders, and they were like, yeah, okay, because I pay commission to other like channels that I have to sell products, and that's like how we kickstart. Of course, it blew out at some point. There was issues. Like eventually we started to grow too fast, and before we got orders, makers knew that we were selling their products, and then they would be like, what is this company doing? Are they like trying to clone our products, like scam us, whatever? So we had to ask for forgiveness and explain who we are, and they got angry. We dropped a lot of makers out of the platform, but at that time we managed to survive. We had enough makers on the platform with relationships established that we could keep going. And today, many of those makers who dropped off are back on the platform, and they're very happy. But it took some time, but that's how we kickstarted it.
Great. Hands up for, okay, we got one. Nick's on it. All right.
Hi.
Yes.
Lavri here from Embed, Conrad. We share one big common thing, that is struggle with English. But for Faire, what's the biggest competitive advantage that no one can replicate? And what is your existential threat for Faire?
Today, our advantage is the network effects. Like today with Faire, we are in a business where the more data we have, we're a data company, right? Like we give products recommendations. The better recommendations we give to people, better sales they have, more they buy from us. And the more customers we have, more data we have, our recommendations improve. So we have this flying wheel of a network effect that makes it very hard for anybody to come try to compete with us. Initially, our advantage was really like our pace of execution. We were like, we're building this thing, we know exactly what we're building, and we're going to build this and learn and execute as fast as we can, and that's what we did and how we got to the network effects that we have today. What was the second part of the question?
Existential threat.
There has been many over the years. Today, I don't see a big existential threat. We have been preparing for it. We are very good at stressing out about what can go wrong and dealing with it before it goes wrong. We do that a lot. We get together and we're like, things are going very well. What can break? How can we fail? And whatever comes up, we make sure that we have a plan B and C and D for those things. The hardest challenge we have today is like when you're scaling from 45 people to 200 to 300, 400, 500, is keeping people organized well and executing well. So like, and keeping hiring very talented people, keeping the bar the same as it is as we add a lot of people.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Brenton.
Hi.
Hi.
I want to know that what is that one point that would make you realize that this thing will not work out? Maybe you're working on a few ideas, you've reached a point, but then how do you realize that this is not going to be fruitful?
Yeah, that's a good question, too. One of my biggest fears of starting a company was of getting to this. Like, you're like, it feels like it's working, and like a year goes by, and 2 years, and 3 years, and like, time is our most valuable resource, right? And my fear was like to get like 5 years in, you're like, this could still work, let's keep going, because we're founders and we have that drive, right? We're not gonna give, you have to have that thing of not giving up. So for us, I mean, for us it worked, so it's obviously hard, but to answer that. But what we did initially, very intentionally, is like, we're going to aim very high, and we're going to build this rocket ship and fuel it with nitrogen. It's either going to take off or it's going to explode. But I want to know fast. Like, failing in like 10 months, a year was a better outcome than like getting stuck on a business that's not going to work for 5 years. So we aimed very high, and we went after it, and we worked as hard as we could to make it work. And if it were going to fail, we were going to learn about it very quickly.
Excellent. I think we have time for one more. Just throw your hand up if you got a question.
Hello, hi. So you've proven yourself to be a really amazing entrepreneur and really resourceful. Do you have any other plans to try to launch another startup?
I hope not.
May I ask why?
I'm not stopping Fair. Like we have a very good thing going. Like again, in 3 years we built a very successful company. We have room to be much larger than what we are today. Our market is really big. We are building an amazing environment with amazing people. Like I enjoy the people, and I enjoy also the two things that really keep me motivated today is the people I work with, and the difference that we are making for our customers. Like I believe we have the right customers as well to be helping today. We're helping like small entrepreneurs on both sides of our marketplace, and being able to give them like hope for the future and tools to keep competing with Amazon or like e-commerce and whatever it is that they feel a threat, and they look at us and they feel like, okay, there is a tech company that's looking after us and helping us succeed, is really motivating to me. And I hope that we keep succeeding so that I can make a bigger difference for these people.
If you couldn't literally feel Marcelo's passion there, I can tell you it was very real. Just on that point, could you give us a sense for where you think Fair will be a year from now?
It's very hard to say. Like we have, again, very aggressive plans. Like we want to multiply by a big number. Not like it's not double, it's more than that. Okay. We are definitely like putting in way more, like again, leadership and organization. Like we have been building what Square did decently well as well, which is like we're trying to build a very solid foundation to be able to be a much larger company in the future. Not like we're not trying to grow as fast as we can and then like things fall apart. We're like putting everything in place so that when we grow more and we get to be bigger, we have a solid foundation to maintain that, to keep doing that.
Awesome. Okay, let's give Marcelo a big round of applause again.
Thank you.
So just to wrap up, there is a Fair booth at the back. I think Marcelo will be there a little bit as well with another team member. Yep, waving there. So if you have any questions about Fair or about Marcelo, feel free. Shameless plug because he won't say he's too modest. They are growing. They're hiring.
We're hiring.
So if you're interested in that hyper-growth track, I think we've revealed one hyper-growth company that's in town today. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I would also say, just shameless plug on Concept and Velocity, that we didn't exist in the form we do today when Marcelo was starting his first company. And I would hope that what we have built as a support system in the Waterloo region, Concept and Velocity being two big anchors of that, would have accelerated the path you were clearly on anyway. I don't think you needed our help to achieve what you did. But I think we can definitely help aspiring entrepreneurs avoid painful mistakes through the community that we've built.
I mean, on that, I definitely think it can help a lot. And like, no matter who you are or what you have done before, start a startup, chances are you're going to fail. Anything you can take, any corporation that's trying to give you help that can change your chance of success by 2 or 3 or 5%, whatever it is that you think it is, take it. And the job that they're doing with Concept and Velocity is really amazing. I really enjoy going there and talking to the companies and trying to help them get into Y Combinator or whatever it is that they're trying to solve on their business.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Okay. All right, on that note, I just wanted to say we at Concept here on campus are always very grateful to the alumni in our network who are busy people doing amazing things, as you've heard, and they always make time to come and talk to you, the students, who are, some of you, aspiring entrepreneurs. So maybe one day it'll be you telling us your story. So thank you for doing this. This means a lot when you're a student, and it means a lot for us. So thank you.